Hey everybody, this is the Fall Line with KS and Company, and we are back for part two. I'm Dave Capron. We're here with Troy Walsh, and my buddy Angelo Ross is here making sure that I stay on track. And even when I don't, he just laughs and lets me keep going.
Correct.
And then tells me later, dude, what are you doing?
What are you thinking?
Yeah. Hey, but I wanted to kind of take that break then and then start with this one because we wanted to talk about the Nordica videos here in a little bit, but I wanted to start with MA so people can use their MA skills and start watching what's going on. I think that's a big part of those videos, being able to watch you, Troy, and watch Michael and Megan ski in those videos and actually understand what's going on. It was really cool commentary that you all three of you gave while each other was skiing to really highlight and explain what was going on fundamentally with the fundamentals and how the person was applying them. So I just wanted to touch base in terms of movement assessment because that's really, I think, it's my opinion, I think it's probably the most important thing that we do as ski teachers in terms of I can be the greatest person and have people love me. I can have a great presentation, but if I'm not able to watch what somebody does and see if they're doing it or not doing it or what happens when I give them an activity, I can't make a decision that effectively works for them. I need to be able to know what's going on to actually make change or change my activity to meet their needs. So I think this is a pretty important piece of the whole thing. And when it breaks down in terms of how we think about it, it's I think simple in some ways. We think observation description of the performance, and that can be with body and ski. You know, body performance, ski performance, pretty cool to have both. Kind of hard to get the next one to evaluate and describe what's going on. And we can't evaluate the performance if we don't know what the body's doing to then make the ski do it. And then we come up with a prescription. And that's kind of the crux of our MA type thing. And what I'm curious is I just wanted to throw it to you guys. You know, when we think about body mechanics, we think about ski performance, the activity. I mean, what are some of the highlights or what are some of the information you want to give to people in terms of MA? You know, when you think about the 5 fundamentals, where and how do you like to help people do MA better? What would you give them for, and that may be different, Troy, for depending on the experience level. So I understand that. So if you want to preface it on that, but what are some of your thoughts on MA?
I think a lot of times because we have some of our manuals are very, very specific and very technical, and sometimes that language doesn't flow the way that conversationally the way that you'd like it to, especially like on the level 1 or even a level 2. I really ask candidate, just in your own words, can you tell me what the ski's doing in the snow? And then if they describe, well, you know, I see this moving faster than that. Okay, cool. And then you start trying to educate within a fundamental of like, what would that look like? Or what would that connect to into a fundamental that we talk about in our skiing? Or what skill do you think is being shown or not shown there? Just allowing them to use their own language and building that roadmap to becoming more exact in the language, but starting out very, very open, very conversational. And that's, I find, I've had the most success with when I talk to candidates of just allowing them to speak. I don't need to hear the textbook. Let's just talk. Let's just talk about what you see the body doing. Okay. They're moving this around. Great. What would you like to see them move around? I want them to see them move their legs more. Great. Now let's start to add some meat to that understanding.
Yeah. And this is for both of you. What are some of the things that you've done personally to get better at MA? You know, and it could be something that really hit home. It could be something you did before your level 2 or associate. I know I took the associate. I think Troy did too. I know, Angela, you had associate before we were level 1, 2. So our level 2 was our associate. But when we're thinking, just what were some of the things that really hit home? You know, I did this thing when I was getting ready for my level 3, or I trained this way and I still do it now. Are there some things? Because I know we're always working on it. But for Angela, like, what's something you have done and continue to do maybe to get better at MA?
when I started to realize that what we do on skis is basically just a modified gait, GAIT. That helped me understand skiing better. I was lucky to teach biology for 20 years, and one of my personal rabbit holes of interest was human evolutionary biology. And very quickly, you start to learn how bipedalism evolved, and then how bipedalism works, and the walking gait and the running gait are a little bit different. And I consider skiing to be just a modified version of those gaits. So it gave me an objective place to come at movement from. Yeah. And then all the while, as you go up through the ranks, you start to learn more and more about how skis are designed to work, like how the really smart and educated, well-paid engineers that build them with a purpose, like an intention, And when you start to put those two things together, I think watching skiing and assessing it for efficiency and everything else, and not that we just look at efficiency, we look at creativity and things like that, but coming from two objective places, meaning how the body operates and then how the skis operate, helped me to focus my MA, like how I go about it. I also look at other sports, like once I've been hearing about lateral learning and whatnot for decades, right? But once I really came to grips with how mountain biking works, or how skateboarding, what good skateboarding or surfing look like, or riding a horse, or rounding the bases, or taking the puck down the ice, you start to see all these similarities in how the body moves in these different arenas, so figurative and literal arenas, if you're talking about professional sports. I found that to be very helpful, but then I also I'm not an uber technical thinker. Like, my wife thinks Excel is a video game. I'm a Microsoft Word guy, so I also try to pepper in, some creativity into my movement analysis. And what I have found that works for me a lot of the time, I'm not going to say all the time, but a lot of the time, if I watch a skiing performance or a snowboarding performance, just somebody sliding toward me on skis or a snowboard, I'll come up with an adjective. And it might be, oh, that looks really smooth. That might be the first word that pops into my mind. Or that looks really choppy, or that looks really graceful, or that looks really forced. But then I'll start to ask myself, well, why does it look that way? Like, what's going on that made me come up with that word? But then you have to make it down to the gear and say, is it affecting that performance? And if it's not, then leave it alone. But if it is affecting the performance, and you're seeing, like, for example, a big stem at the top of the turn that you don't want there, or you're seeing them jam on the brakes at the bottom, then you address that. But that's kind of how I go about it, and I'm not particularly married to starting at the skis and going up, or the head and going down, or whatever. I think it's situational, and as an example, like a bump run, I'm going to look at the whole image of a bump run. I want to see top to bottom. I want to see the whole entire thing, the line choice and all that jazz. But if I'm looking at railroad tracks, like, I'm going to look at the skis and the tracks that leave in the snow. So I'll change it up depending on the activity.
Yeah, I've heard you talk about the gait, and I think that gave you a real avenue of understanding body mechanics, just how we move, how the body works. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a big deal. Troy Boy, what do you think? What was your thing?
100%. I think I like how Angela talked about that. I think there's a lot of times that MA can feel very complicated, but if you really break it down to like what the ski, or what the prescribed ski performance is that you're trying to look at, and what's happening, you start to get a pile of information, because there's a lot of times when if we don't have any parameter to know what we're looking for, it's really hard to look at someone and say, well, they're up here on the mountain, they must be doing something right, But if I can prescribe, like Angela said, can you do a railroad track? All right. Now I have a specific things that I'm looking for. that are going to allow that ski to be able to do railroad tracks, or that person to be able to do railroad tracks. Without having that prescribed thing, it just becomes, it's just too big. There's just not enough detail to be able to, in the question. So you're like, well, no one's getting hurt. Everyone's okay here. That's good. A lot of the other stuff, I think people start to try to adjust the movement versus the speed of the movement, or the time, that dirt stuff.
Mm-hmm.
If we just can change that of like, okay, do the same thing, but maybe slow down tipping the ski from one side to the other. Just see what happens there. And that result will probably change if they slow that down, or give them a timing, or say, can you do that in this part of the turn? All of a sudden now they're having to really focus on a specific movement at a specific time and space, and hopefully you'll start seeing different things at that point.
Yeah, Jeb was in Chris and I were doing an MA thing. I think it was at Pro Jam in Wednesday afternoon, and Jeb was with us, came with us. He came in to check on, make sure we're doing the right things. I remember Jeb when we were really talking about the fundamental. This is quite a while. This is back, I don't know, probably 215, 216. And Jeb's like, so do you guys, you emphasize the fundamentals in there, right? I'm like, yes, we do look at those. The first thing I said was like, no, we don't talk about them at all.
What fundamentals?
Oh, fundamentals? We're supposed to talk about those? But someone asked, like, well, I have a really hard time watching somebody ski and then knowing what to look at. And Jeb said, just set up a task. Set up a task with some parameters so that you know what they have to do somewhat timing wise, or a specific thing with the ski, like Angela said, the railroad track. So you know what the outcome's supposed to look like. Hopefully, pick a task, the outcome. And then you can compare against. That's kind of what you're saying, Troy. It's like, just watching someone come down a bump run, if you don't know what they wanted to try to achieve in that bump run, you're just kind of watching skiing, which you can look at it, but it's hard to say, okay, I see them doing this. They're not able to do this. Jeb's like, just set up a task. And then like you went on, like, then modify it. If you still don't know what's going on, make them slow it down to see if they can do that. There's
Cal Cantrell. I remember skiing with him for like one afternoon in Aspen one time. And he was, at the end of it, he was like, you can't see what someone's doing in a run. Have them make 10 turns on their right foot, 10 turns on their left foot, 10 turns on both feet. You'll be able to figure something out then. It's like, have them do something a little different that's out of their norm. And I think a lot of times, we miss this piece when it comes to MA, because people are pretty keen on what they do with their skiing. Ask them on the lift ride, hey, what are you doing? I mean, that you came here, you want to learn you want to do something better. Tell me about your skiing. And I will bet you that person will pretty close to nail it. I get heavy at the bottom, which probably means that they're pretty light at the top. Oh, all right. Fantastic. You have something to be able to look for immediately. Trust your guests. Trust them. They know their skiing pretty well.
Yeah. And I like to ask them, like, what when people see you from the lift, like, how would you like them to describe your skiing? Because there are personality types out there, and you'll get the folks who want to look really super powerful and racy. You'll get the people who want to look, silky smooth, and that can help you guide what they're doing as well, especially when it comes to things like duration and intensity and rate and timing. Like somebody who wants to look like, you remember Ulf Samuelsson, the Pittsburgh Penguin that just blasted people into the boards? Like some people want to look like that, and other people want to look like Fred Astaire. And you can adjust those components of dirt to help them get to that. Makes your job easier and makes them more satisfied with the product.
Yeah. And I hope people work on this. This is, we're doing it all the time, watching people ski. And, Troy will come up to me, Angelo, and I know he'd probably come up to you and he'd go, hey, I saw you over on Superstar. What were you guys doing? I mean, that's usually your first thing is to ask what we were doing, to know what tasks we were doing. He saw some things, but you want to know what the objective was and what I was trying to perform coming down the hill before you're going to give feedback. Because you might have seen something, you go, oh, okay, that's why you were doing this. Or, hey, maybe think of trying this. I mean, we're always looking at each other and seeing how we're moving and then trying to figure out, like confirming, like, my God, I think I saw him do this. Were you doing this over there?
Yeah. And Angela mentioned that before is like the conversation. I think having the conversation with, or having the person that you're observing say, this is what I'm trying to do. This is really, I have this thought in my skiing. Am I doing that or am I not doing that? And because at that point now you can direct all your attention to whatever they're trying to achieve, and it's going to give some really straightforward information to that person instead of, well, I saw this. Well, I don't care about that part right now. I care about this other thing.
Yep. It's interesting. You want to know what the person was trying to achieve. You want to know what they were. I mean, because I watched Angelo last year. He was doing some pivot slips down Superstar that you were working with your group. And I remember, I don't know if you remember, I came up to you just asking what you were working on because I wanted to know, because I thought I saw at times, him and people were doing different things. At times, I think, I can't remember what you told me, but I remember what I asked you, if you were doing that pivot slip with different releasing mechanisms. Were you always doing it with more of an extension or a suction, that kind of thing?
Yeah, I remember, because it got real, the end of the week, we got a lot of snow and there it kind of got bumpy and people were looking for different tactics for skiing those bumps. And so we were playing around with pivot slips that the edge, release the edges through flexing, release them through extending, like just different ways to solve the problems, because everybody's legs were tired. The conditions were totally different Friday than they were on Thursday. So yeah, just looking for movement options, No.
And it's fun that way. We always go over and ask first. It's like, you don't go over here because those folks that come over and go, hey, dude, you shouldn't have done that with flexion. You should have been extending there. It's like, do you even know what I was trying to do over there?
Doesn't that just make you feel warm and fuzzy when people throw shoulds at you?
Oh, yeah. It's like, dude, you don't even know what I was doing, man. That's why I love coming onto the lift. You come onto the lift and just ski like crap on purpose. And then they go, Capron, what are you doing? Exactly what I wanted, man. So as we move from MA and we move into, I wanted to just hit, because I think we should, and it's a generality, kind of what I'm doing is, but we see things, we see generalities, we see where people kind of miss the mark or where we think they should focus more on. I know we've had many conversations, all three of us, about like teaching fundamentals. So we've got 6 of them, but they're all important, all equally important in their realm, but there's definitely some ones I know that we all kind of look to that this is something people should probably pay more attention to, whether it's in an assessment or just teaching. I just wanted to hit what each of you thought. I mean, Troy, if you're going to pick a fundamental in the teaching realm, that you wanted people to kind of highlight this year from stuff you've seen, what would you choose and what advice would you give them?
I'm going to mess the words up on it, but it's the ability to get people to reflect on performances. Mm-hmm. That one.
Yeah.
Yeah. And describe what they're feeling. I think there's an uncomfortable portion when all of a sudden you give them that time to reflect and to go and practice. And then they come back and you ask them, so what did you think of that? And it goes quiet. And we don't feel comfortable with that. They don't feel comfortable with that. So we're instantly like, okay, this is what but being aware that they need to give them that time and keep your mouth shut and let people come up with the answer. So that it comes from them, because now it becomes a confirmation conversation between the two people versus me always saying, this is what you did. This looks good, or this might be a little bit off. When it comes from the person, they're paying attention to it. And if they're not paying attention to it, maybe that's something about your coaching that you should be addressing.
Yeah. And Angelo, jump in here too, and I'm asking to both of you, so you can jump at the same time. Maybe they can listen to both of you at the same time. That'd be fun. But with the reflection, and yeah, it's hard to early season, man, to get every single word. You know, Troy's talking about and I'm reading it here, so I'm not sounding smart. I'm reading it so I get all the words. So we're not picking at Troy because I'm not sure I would have got a word for word either, Troy. I know I wouldn't have. You know, facilitate the learner's ability to reflect upon experiences and sensations, you know, is the official wording of that. And when we get into like an assessment, I think this was one of the fundamentals that I find people like it's so important. And like you said, Troy, to not rush people. And when we get into the assessment, because the time is somewhat limited, they get into that reflection part and can get really bogged down. And I'm just wondering, Angelo, you know, are there some thoughts on like when Troy said they get kind of that soundbite of nothing? It's just quiet. You know, what are some of the thoughts? I'm thinking like, one of the things I would do is, you know, in a real situation is like, well, why don't we explore it a little more? Let's think about, you know, what Troy said earlier, you know, you were doing it this way. Let's change the speed of it. Instead of just trying to dig it out of them and stand there talking. That would be one way I do. And maybe it's wrong, but I was wondering your thoughts, Angelo, on how to keep that rolling when we're in that reflection part.
One of the questioning faux pas that is pretty common is we just blast an unexpected question at people and they don't, that's not where their brain might have been. So I think in order to avoid that awkward and painful silence after you ask that question, set it up ahead of time and maybe start setting it up earlier than you think and build up to it. So like at the top of the run, hey, Troy, we're going to try these, we're going to try these step turns. And I just want you to come up with one adjective on what it feels like when we do these. Just tell me at the bottom. So, you know, we get to the bottom and he might say weird or whatever. But then I can build on that to, you know, over a couple of runs and get to the culmination of the lesson, the end of the lesson and everything. And he's probably set up in a place to really start talking about it. Let's do them again. And build on that. Like, what about them feels weird? Well, I'm not used to lifting my foot off the ground. You might, and then that might lend itself to coming back to outside ski fundamental, you know? So, I'm just making that up, but maybe it works. But I think setting people up, letting them know that we're going to ask a question yields better responses. You know what I mean? So that's all it made me think of.
Yeah, I think it's a super important fundamental, and you know, I'll probably get some feedback from Bob. Bob would be like, Dave, they're all important. Each one has its own importance. But I mean, in terms of, I think where we're going and what we're asking people, you know, our ski pros and ride pros to do today is definitely, this is a big part of it, to allow people to reflect on their own experience. And it's that giving them time. Troy, you said you got to give them time. Don't rush them, and then don't try to tell them what they're supposed to be reflecting on. Angelo, you know, the setup's pretty important, and then how to roll into sometimes it just takes more time or more doing it again.
I want to address a little bit earlier in the lesson too, because I totally agree with Troy that reflection piece is what they're going to take away, and that's probably what they're going to end up practicing. You know, they'll remember the beginning and the end of the lesson basically, but that middle chunk is sometimes ignored. I think we have a real tendency to become very lecture oriented. It's just kind of sage on the stage. Here comes this information, you know, try to absorb some of it. But if you look at the wording and the teaching fundamentals around play, exploration, and experimentation, I think those are vital. Those three words to me don't get enough attention because they really give you some launch pads for high level instruction, you know, best practices instruction regarding how kids learn, how, you know, adult learning theory, that sort of thing. And it's as simple as a language setup. So if you want to do something playful and you set it up, let's play this game. You have to make sure it's actually a game. Like, hey, let's play this game, you know, symmetrical medium radius turns down to the chair, like that, you know, at least make it fun, but use language that sets up an actual game. Or if it's an experiment, use language that sets up an actual experiment. Let's try this and see what happens, or language that sets up experimentation. Let's go into that sunny pitch and try it. Now let's go into that shady pitch and try it. Let's try it on this green run. Let's try it on this black run. And you're actually exploring the mountain and exploring the technique at the same time, And I think just having those little simple things on lock so that when it comes time to deliver the instruction, it's not the run of the mill lecture that you see very often.
Yeah. Yeah, and I got to jump this in. I'm going to let Troy. I know Troy will remember this. Troy and I, as we were coming up through, and we were on Ed staff, and we were doing a lot of exploring and experimentation with at that time exam activities. He's smiling already. We were seeing if we could take, we had back then, I think it's kind of like it is now. We had like 6 activities when we were doing it versus the 9 and the 3 categories when we used to have the mountain skiing and the agility versus it was like, okay, we got 6 tasks. Troy, how many tasks can we put together and do as one task? Remember that? But we were just trying to see what we could do. What did we have at one time? We had hop turns, pivot slips, and 1,000 steps, I think, all in one.
Steps. Yeah. You had to jump up, kick the flood of your feet, pivot, land, repeat.
I'd like to see that next week, please.
Yeah, exactly.
We haven't done
the old bottle of Advil.
But kind of my point, I think those kind of things, Troy, have really, that was some of the part that really opened up and you grew from that in terms of really allowing things to explore, like try anything. Like tell us about, I mean, you do a lot of 1 foot stuff, and the one that I think is super cool, and I have seen you do it, and you go, hey, try this, and you've done it. And then I said a few choice words and I just skied off. But it's like when I'm alone, I'm trying it, but not is that 1-footed pivot slip.
Yeah. That's a pretty special one. That can be, if your alignment's in good shape, you can really play with the twisting and releasing and trying to bring it all the way around. And it allows you to just explore, and I'll take this from Murmur all the time. She always said this: you can fail when you're going really fast, or you can fail when you're going really slow. When I tip over and I'm going really slow, I don't usually have to call patrol. It's like, I just get, it's like, all right, you get wound up. It doesn't feel right. Perfect. But just exploring the range of how far you can twist, how accurate you can be with the releasing of the edge. It's so good just to do that. It's, that cold, windy day when the lifts are down and all you got is your learn to area. Well, let's do hard things on easy slopes. See what happens.
Yeah, because what are the first parts? Like I know you've done forms of the 1-footed pivot slip with a group, and you may throw it out to them and show them, and they like fail. But then how do you break it down? Like, what are some of the things that you do with a group so they can start trying? They never achieve it in a day, but I know there's some things you do in there to get them to do some of it.
Kind of a javelin traverse. I'll do a javelin traverse, do that a bunch of times, do the tail javelin traverse where the tails are going across the hill. Do that a bunch of times, and then try to get them to do a kind of a javelin stop. Just go in a slight straight run or a small straight run on pretty gentle terrain, good firm snow. Come to a stop in that absolutely ultra twisted out javelin. So hopefully the ski that you're lifted is going more down the hill than anything. Do that a bunch of times. And then I think that after that, I'd have them try to stop because they're in a very twisted relationship to your equipment. You're over countered by a mile. You release that edge, that leg is going to want to snap back or twist back to become aligned because there's some twist built in your body. All of a sudden you've got your straight run back, and you can start blending it all in. But yeah, it's a pretty fun little place to muck around. And it does make people's eyes open up pretty wide when you say, what did he just do there? Really?
Have you tried those, Angelo? The one-footed pivot slips?
I have tried one-footed pivot slips.
Yeah, they're quite frustrating.
They are.
It's even more frustrating when you get the demo from Troy. Right. And then, after that, it's like, do I really want to try this? Because I've tried it before and know how bad. And then I watch that and I'm like, oh, so I'll wait till I'm alone. I look around. There's no cameras, no webcams, and then I give it a shot. But that is a tough one.
Mm-hmm. Until you tip over, you haven't failed. And even then you didn't fail. You're probably learning a whole lot because you're like, oh, I went too far.
Yeah, but it's great, the creativity, and then breaking it down and exploring the parts of it and how you break it down with the javelin type stuff. Because I've literally done it with you. You've had me doing those parts, and I've seen you do it with groups, and to break down and say, okay, I'm still working on that. That's my goal, but these are the parts to get there. And I think that's the part people lose is when they're training, they don't break things down and go, okay, I want to be able to do this. But how do I do some of the parts? How do I work on the fundamentals to get there? They try to jump all the way to the end zone, instead of doing, you got to go to the 10-yard line to the 20-yard line before you get down to the end zone.
But I think there's a lot of times when people, they go out there and all of a sudden they, great. And they try to do the whole task. Okay, great. That's wonderful. Cause sometimes you might find someone that can do that. Yeah. But in my head, whenever I played with these things, it's like, I'm not afraid to pick an activity that people are not going to be successful with. Boom. What do I have to do at that point? I get to coach. Yay. I get to help them out. If I'm just shooting for, let's just do a javelin stop or whatever, or a traverse in the javelin. Most of the time when we're talking about level 3 folks or education staff level folks, are probably going to be able to pick that up pretty quick. I undershot the task. Do hard things. It's okay.
It's okay to fail, man. Murmur told me that, so I'm going to go with it.
Yeah. And build my career on it.
Yeah, good.
Well, I remember Ron Kipp, he said it he was talking, I can't remember if it was back when we were doing all the Skills Quest stuff with him. I can't remember if we were Bretton Woods or when he was at training, because he came to our training, ed staff training for one season there with us here in the East. And, he said that when an athlete finds something they can't do, they've found gold. In terms of that's the place that they can still grow and improve their skiing or performance. But it was like, if you just, everything you do, you're able to do really easy, then you're not really finding those spots to improve yourself, was kind of his thing. He says, you found gold when you found something you failed at. And I thought that was pretty cool. I remembered that. But, and I have found a lot of stuff that I can fail at. So I found a lot of gold. I wish it was gold that I could put into dollars, but.
I also see quite a bit of cognitive disconnect too, because I'll ski with some folks who have ambition of leveling up, and, maybe something like bumps is part of that. And they have a lot of trouble in the bumps, and by the end, it's like a runaway freight train, and there's not a whole lot of flexing and extending happening, and just not absorbing the terrain. And so the speed builds up, but then you say, well, can you do a squat? Can you do a squat and stand back up? And a lot of times, the answer is no, so there's got to back up from that task and build the ability, build the strength, build the flexibility without the skis on in the first place, But I think that's part of that story too, where there's not a lot of practice. There's not a lot of breaking down activities, and there's not a lot of, in some cases, thinking about what you have to do on the hill when you're off the hill. So if you can't touch your toes in your living room, you probably aren't going to touch your toes sliding down a hill, so on and so forth.
Yeah. So as we jump to people skills and what we want to kind of highlight, or what I'm asking you guys is what's the thing you think is missed, or really what we need to focus on? I'm wondering if if you're going to say something we've already said, you guys have said, but what do you think in the people skills, Troy?
Boy, and I think it's been interesting, and I'll get to this in a roundabout way. A lot of these podcasts and articles, and people start to recognize your name. They start to get to know you before you know them. So all of a sudden, like when I have these, and my one is to be able to have conversations on trust. Two-way communication built upon trust. All of a sudden, they know a lot more about me than I know about them. So I'm kind of like, whoa, hold on. Okay. All right. Yeah. I've got dogs. I like to fish. I like to hunt. Okay. And I'm already behind the ball with these guys. I'm like, all right, I got to start asking questions. And I kind of feel like I'm squeezing that one. But that, in my eyes, that's the one that you're yourself. You're trying to be really open and honest, and they might not talk about scheming or anything. They just want to talk about you. And that one, I think, is probably the hardest in our certification pieces, because it's a tense piece. And I think a lot of the times we don't have enough time to be able to have those conversations, because we've all been on the lift with somebody, and these guys and gals trust us a lot. You can be riding up the lift with someone that you barely know or just getting to know, and they're like, yeah, I just lost my job and wife divorced me. And you're like, whoa. Wow, that was heavy, quick. We're at Tower 3. Whew, here we go, man. So, it's funny, because I think, they confide in a lot of us in their just general world. They want to be welcome, and our job is to really build off of that trust. And like you were talking about with Michael and Robin, when people know, and then could say that about a lot, Dave, Miriam, Sean Smith, those guys would call you, talk to you by name, and you'd say, like, I can't believe it. It's unbelievable. These guys remember that. And you walked away feeling like you're 10 feet tall and bulletproof. You were just wonderful. You trust those people all the time because they made you feel so good in that moment. And I think that's what a lot of our membership look at. It's like, they trust us. And they have these conversations that that have been built off of that.
Yeah. What do you got, Angela? What's your highlight in people skills?
Would have to be positive like that?
No, it should be whatever you want, man.
That's hard to follow. Why'd you ask him first? Why'd you ask him? I think this. I think, and I'll be the first one in line saying this directly applies to me. Our ego gets in the way of our people skills being as good as they can be. And that's the ego spectrum, from arrogance to, not having very much confidence in yourself, like run the whole gamut. But I think the real trick, is to be aware that when you have conflicts with people, and they happen all the time, they can happen in the line at the grocery store, they happen in the kitchen with your husband or wife or partner or whatever you got. But those little moments of abrasiveness are little red flags that could be clues to where you both have deficits in your personality. And I think paying attention to those moments, and then having the wherewithal to ask yourself, which part of that is my fault? And then actively working to try to get rid of that piece of your personality like that. I think that's important. But the gift of it is that you get somebody to work through it with, because you can't do it by yourself. So you find somebody you trust and love and say, hey, where are my shortcomings? And then will you please let me know when I'm doing that, and come up, whatever it is, come up with a little hand signal. You do this with your hand on your nose when I start to act like that. But then eventually you'll start to recognize it yourself, and you can work it out of your personality. I think that's the gift of it. It's really, really hard to make yourself that vulnerable. It's really, really hard to ask for that help, but you get to go through it with another person. That relationship gets stronger, and then all your relationships get stronger. I think that's the real gift of the people skills.
Yeah, I agree with both of those, man. The level of trust that they give us is pretty impressive, and like you said, Troy, with all the podcasts and all these different things, and they know of us, and they know a lot more sometimes than we know of them. Like, haven't met them, and you walk up, Angela knows you. She kind of standing there, and someone comes up and goes, "I know that voice, man. I listen to you all the time. Now I got a face with the voice."
And they say, "I thought you were taller."
Yeah.
But I mean, I remember the first time it happened at Whitetail that I rolled up to an event, and you're conspicuous, right? You're wearing a jacket that people recognize, and you're in a group of people wearing the same jacket, and there's a little bit of a buzz sometimes at these events. And I remember these two guys came up and said, "We listened to your podcast." I just couldn't believe anybody listened to it. It was like, it was so overwhelming, but then it never stopped. So like even at Mammoth last week, roll into this group of examiners, and they're like, "Hey, we appreciate you guys doing the show." And it to Troy's point, it can get it still feels weird. I don't ever want it to not feel weird, because I don't want that to be normalized in my life. That
No.
I want that to feel weird every time, so I can thank them for watching it and let them know that it means a lot to us that they spend their time listening to us. You know what I mean? I don't ever want to lose that part of that.
No, that is the coolest part. It is. And then the self-aware part, I mean, that you were talking about, Angela, and our own egos. I mean, Sue got us going on that. Coach Sue at training last year, more specifically than we already knew. And she's like, "What are some of the things you do that you think are a strength that sometimes when you come into a group, it actually turns people off?" And you're like, "Oh my God, now I got to think about even the things I thought I did well. How bad can they be to certain people?" I'm like, oh, my brain. I'm like, God, now you're like thinking, okay, I can't even do the stuff I'm good at.
But you know what? It just occurred to me that it ties back when we were talking about teaching. Troy said how challenging that reflection piece can be.
Yeah.
But that's exactly what we're talking about right now. And either like in the situation Troy brought up, it's about getting people to reflect and tell us. And what Sue brought up, it's about us reflecting on ourselves and trying to fit. But that reflection is hard. That's tough.
Yeah, it is. And it, when you start doing it after event, you do it after the morning. You're like, okay, did everybody get that? Where do I got to go next? All that kind of, all those things start going through of where we're at, who was able to do it, who needs still work, who needs what fundamental. Did I give everybody the same amount of time they wanted to do some teaching stuff? And then we go from there. And that kind of goes into my next piece that, Angela, we got the guy, we got one of the three, we got 33.33% of what happened at Interski in terms of the blue circle. Troy's here because he was with Stephen make sure I get this right now, Troy. Stephen Helfenbein and Brian Smith and yourself. It was kind of your piece of delivery other than the skiing. I mean, there was other pieces, but this was a presentation thing the three of you did on the decisions and behavior of the instructor, the outer blue circle in the learning connection model. And I just, I know you can't do your whole presentation here. People go, "We want to hear more from that." And I know we're going to hear some at training. There'll be probably some things through the winter on it, but, just tell them a little bit about kind of the synopsis of kind of the highlights of that with that Interski.
It was kind of cool just to be a part of that group for sure. And we knew we wanted to add some meat to that because it's not a new idea. I mean, there's a slide in our presentation that was taken from a manual in 1993, and it commented on decision-making process for the instructor is a very big deal. And it kind of was, that was it. You're like, well, and we've all been in the industry long enough, so we realize that you've heard the saying of like, how do you gain experience? Well, you make a bunch of bad decisions. And that's how you gain a lot of experience. And we just felt like, oh boy, we got to get away from that one. You know, we want to give people some tools in order to be able to make better decisions and be able to become more relevant to their guests easier, faster, more often, so they have a great interaction with their guests. And so we kind of ran through this loop, or this decision-making process. It's the ODA loop, the observe, orient, decide, and act. And all of that boils down to, it's like, you know, how do I make a decision that sets us up for more success to be relevant to our guest? That's how we were looking at it. Cause there might be a guest, if you're a real technically focused person and you're really just, you know, you only focus on technical side of skiing, maybe your guest really needs the emotional side and the people skill side of things. And if you only focus on that technical side of things, you're going to miss the need of that individual. And they're going to walk away. Is that lesson good? Yeah. Did you like that person? Yeah, pretty good. Would you do it again? Well, I don't know. You didn't hit their needs as well as you thought you needed. You only worked on that technical side of things. So we wanted to make sure that we give people some options of being able to say, yeah, you know, this person's had a rough time at work. You don't have to go and do technical skiing all the time. It can be fun and explore and get them to relax and enjoy the mountain environment. So it was that. A lot of parts of that is of going through that ODA loop is how fast or how slow, or the frequency that you go through that. And it's about trying to just almost prepare yourself to be just that one step ahead of the person in front of you, or that you're talking with, and not getting lost in a spot and making the wrong decision, going to the wrong place, going to too much of a trail and ruining their confidence.
Yeah. And it's interesting because, you know, I get it a little bit, and I know you guys do, that when you have an understudy and you kind of had a plan, you know, because we all set out like the basic plan, you know, but I don't give them a big plan because I'm not really sure I know where I'm going to end. You know, if I've got a certain event, like if I've got a level 2 prep or whatever the focus, we have kind of our outline for our event that the members know what the content is, but I don't know how I'm going to get to each part because I don't know till I see what happens. And so it's interesting, you know, Jim Shaw is really good at this. Jim will be standing there and he'll go, someone, you know, Jeb skied up, it was last year or something. Jeb skied up and said, you know, we were watching Jim there and I don't think he knew where he was going. And Jim goes, I had no idea, man. I was trying to figure it out. I hadn't decided. I was trying to see where the group was and I wasn't sure yet. You know, I think that's some of the trouble. And that's why I wanted Angela to jump in too. That when people are coaching, they have that pre-programmed, they know where they're going to go. And there's a lot of, you know, I don't want to say a lot, that we are really looking to be able to teach to the individuals. So we have to change course, or we have to really watch what's going on. And that's really what this piece is about, isn't it, Troy? To understand when to make decisions, where you're going to go. Don't make decisions before you see what's happening.
Yeah. You know, I just kind of overviewed the indoor presentation on the outside. When we were outside, we just took an activity. We took 3 members of the group that we were skiing with and we're like, hey, anyone feel like having about a 20-minute lesson? And all of a sudden, and people were just blown away. It was like, this wasn't planned. It's like, nope.
Oh.
Nope. We just grabbed 3 people. You know, we watched people ski and we stepped in and out of the role of the instructor. And this was like, I made this decision because this is what I just saw. And I made this decision because this is what I just saw. And I modified the activity for this person because I saw that go down. And all of a sudden, they're just like, what? That's just like, it was so blowing. They blew them away because they were amazed by the fact that we didn't have a plan. We knew we wanted to do this, but we didn't know where that plan was going to go. And we were vulnerable and we were honest with people, and we worked towards our strengths of connecting with people and having good, solid content. And people were really taken by that. That was really super fun. Because you guys know me, if I have to plan stuff out, it probably doesn't get done. I'm just like, man.
It takes time, doesn't it? Like it's that requires a level of autonomy. That's what it is. To go into it without a plan requires it's your DNA, it's your fiber, but it doesn't happen overnight. It's totally normal for people new to anything to have to spend brain power on it, and new instructors all across the land in a couple of weeks are going to be going back into their brainstem, trying to remember what their trainers said, the total cognitive mode. They need the plan step by step. They need the outcome, so on and so forth. The more seasoned instructors who have been around a little bit longer are going to have the ability to look around a little bit more and say, it's the snow's a little bit mushy today, or the snow's a little bit firm today. I know from some experience, I did these clinics that I'm going to focus on these activities. Pivot slips won't work when it's 8 inches of muck and so on, so forth. But, eventually you reach the point where you don't need the plan. You may not even want the plan. The plan gets in the way. And that is a true level of autonomy, I didn't start that way as a classroom teacher. I was a step behind the kids for years, but I eventually reached the point where my administration expecting me to submit lesson plans before I had the kids in front of me just seemed backwards. Like, how in the world can I tell you what I'm going to do when I'm not in the room doing it? And that comes with time and experience and skill development, skill acquisition. It's the Fitz and Posner scale. That's all it is. It's just validation of it.
Cool.
And I think about how that applies into assessment stuff. It's like one of my favorite questions that I was asking last year was like, what made you choose this first activity? Right. And they, I saw this. And then you're like, tell me about your third activity that you chose to do. Why'd you choose that one? And all of a sudden you'd go, uh-oh, what do you mean? Like, hey, because I had 6 and I had to go through 3, There's a reason why you don't have to do a lot. You do the things because you're getting feedback from your group, and then you reorient and you decide to move off of that feedback. And once you start seeing it in action, it's really just super simple. You're just like, oh, you don't have to do a lot because they're giving you all the stuff that they're looking for.
Yeah. And we got to talk about the big thing. Oh no, go ahead, Troy. Sorry, I interrupted you.
The blue ring. We want to make sure it's the ring, not the circle.
Oh, it's the ring. We got to call it the ring. Okay, that's ring. How come no one's corrected me on that?
Because the ring rings
of
rings
power.
have meaning. It's like, Lord of the Rings.
I was thinking the exact same thing.
Those things have some strength to them. So it's
Bilbo and Frodo, man, with the ring. The ring.
Exactly.
The power of the ring. I won't forget that now, the ring. It's still the ring. A ring is a circle. But yeah, we'll go with the ring. I love it. Oh, everybody's going to get on me now. You know who's going to get on me? I guarantee it. Who do you think's going to bust my chops now about the ring and the circle?
I could name 30.
He's not tall. He's not tall. He used to be a team member. He's an alumni now. Angelo sort of works for him in one of his roles.
In one of his roles?
Yeah, he's pretty athletic in the bumps.
Who am I talking?
Tends not to touch the snow.
Lipton.
Terry.
There you go.
Lipton.
I guarantee I'll hear it from Lipton. Caper in a circle. It's supposed to be the ring.
Tends not to touch the snow.
He just floats above it.
That was the clue. Yeah.
But we got to talk, and I wanted to do the 2 parts because I wanted to give ample time, because this one's near and dear to my heart in terms of that you guys did a really cool thing with Nordica in terms of, and you, Michael, and Megan. It's near and dear because these are some of the things I don't think our organization, PSA, ASI, doesn't do enough of these. And there's constraints. I'm not banging on. I'm just saying we don't have a lot of the ability to do a lot of these things from the organization. So I've done a couple of my DVDs in the past and was super psyched with the impact they've had with the exam task stuff. And this just takes it to another level. And the filming, man, I wished I had a film crew like this. When you guys had multiple camera angles, you had a drone too, didn't you? A drone or two that were filming you. Had the 360
on the stick, straight up GoPros.
Yeah, it was sweet. And you had a big mountain and terrain and snow. But no, this was super good in terms of great visual and a great piece for members. You guys put together, if people out there listening don't know, there was you, Michael, and Megan Jones worked with Nordica. Nordica brought you in. It was Big Sky, right?
Yes.
At Big Sky, and you guys filmed a video that's around 16 minutes, 17 minutes, that does all the things that you can work on, you should need to do in the assessment activities to help you achieve your level 1. Did a video on level 2 to do the same thing, a video on level 3. And then it's really cool. The frequently asked questions one, it did look like you were cold drinking that beer, though. You were a little shivering.
Frozen. I was so cold that day. I was just like misdressed. I was in trouble the whole time.
Yeah, but I think they're awesome, and it's great to see they're being put out there. They're on the easiest way, I think, to find them, even though they're on our Snow Pros website. I think it's a little trickier there. Just go to YouTube and just look up Nordica Level 1, and then boom, they all generally show up right there, almost one right on top of the other. And people should watch them. I hope resorts, trainer managers, training directors use them. I hope people go watch them because it's really cool. Give us I gave all that, I know, but I don't want an overview of that. I want to kind of know, Troy, like, how did it get started? Like, and I know you were talking about it for, I don't know, a month or two before you were heading out there to do it, but just kind of the thought process in it. I know there was a lot of, when you watch them, you and Michael and Megan put a lot of time getting ready for that to make sure you had the right things and you said the right things in there.
Yeah. It kind of came together, or it's been batted around for a number of years. I know Michael was really keen on doing something like this with Nordica. And when I came on board, we started chatting about that, and Joe Cavallero, my connection with Nordica, he was very enthusiastic about, yeah. He's like, "Are you an examiner?" I was like, "Yeah, I'm an examiner in the East." He was like, "Would you be interested in doing a project like this?" It's like, fantastic. That'd be super fun. And it was great because there was almost a storyline. Evan brought
Coach
in Evan brought in a storyline, and the photographer, film guy, and he was. We knew where we wanted to go. We knew how we were going to introduce all these pieces. We were able to do multiple takes and pick pieces out of it. And just, it flowed. It was so simple to get there and just talk about what we thought were important aspects of these activities and do them.
Yeah. And the performances are pretty high level. There's been a little discussion, not in a bad way, just people kind of going, what are people going to think? Like, your straight run was fast, man. That was pretty cool. That was some great ability to go Mach 5 in the straight run there without a tuck. I think
my comment on that, on the group chat, was we don't have that much pitch or vertical at my home hill.
Yes, it was. But tell me if I'm wrong. I think the performance was supposed to be meant at a high level. This was being looking at it as the ideal performance, so that it wasn't like, hey, you got to do this to pass your level. And these are the ideal performances, so you can see the movement pattern to understand what you're trying to achieve, to be able to achieve the standard at each one of those levels. And I just wanted you to kind of chat on that a little bit, the dynamics of the movements.
We really stepped it up. And if you listen to the commentary, we refer back to a lot of the basic pieces all the way through every one of the level 2 and level 3 activities. You'll hear us referencing your stance needs to be, a good athletic stance. It has to be adjustable. It has to be variable. When the snow surface changes, we really hit on all of what we believed were very important pieces of. And they're not all of them either. It's not all the fundamentals that we're talking about, but we really kind of hang our hat on. Like, straight run, yeah, you better have good ankle tension, hands up in front of you a little bit, skis straight, you're moving. See how long you can do one. I mean, I guess that would be a fun thing to do, of like, can you maintain one for 50 yards?
Yeah.
Just see what happens, right? Because, I mean, you have to do something a little different when you're moving 3 miles an hour to when you're moving 23 miles an hour.
I think it was like 50. When you went by Michael, I think it was 50. And I'm being conservative.
Definitely, yeah, exactly. Some of the skating is pretty fast too.
Yeah. And what would you like to tell people? Because they look at those performances, and I hope a lot of the ed staff and training managers let people know those are ideal performances, and don't feel you need to achieve that performance to get your thing. But how do you want, you did it, you guys, you skied them. How do you want people to view those, and what would you like them to think about when they're watching it?
Shoot for that. Try to inspire good skiing, inspire accuracy movement. You really go after it, right? Be detail oriented when it comes to these pieces, because it's the snow surfaces change, and when you have a home base of, I know I can do these things, you can probably get through a lot of the assessment activities or whatever that you're trying to do. So yes, be great at them. Don't think of it as, or step back 1 second. I don't think there's one person that's if they went to a level 1 assessment and they crushed a straight run or crushed a wedge turn, everyone that's evaluating that person is going to be like taking notice. And it's like, fantastic. This person's put some time and effort into becoming a great demonstrator. Yeah, do that.
And we talked a little earlier about MA, and you guys put an incredible amount of commentary in there, which is so awesome. And I think it related so much to the fundamentals, obviously, and body mechanics and what it took to get the outcomes. It was just super good commentary of exactly what's going on while I was skiing. So it wasn't this huge, super long thing. It was the time the person was skiing, whoever was doing the skiing. Can you let people know a little bit how they can use this in your mind, your view of for their MA, and starting to understand good skiing? Because you guys, as it moved to the level 3, skied ungroomed, regular groom. We watched you in the ungroomed. It's really cool, that one turn where everybody quits. You had one turn there where the snow kind of grabbed your ski, boom. Next turn, you're back into it. You had to adjust. You didn't give up on the run. You guys put it in the video, which is super cool. But, just kind of that, how can they use this for MA? Can they use it for MA?
Yeah. I mean, maybe just use that as a voiceover in your own head as you go in your own skiing. Can you listen to that? Can you listen to what's going on? Or if you're watching someone and we're talking about, legs are flexing, extending through all phases of the turn, through those medium radius turns in the bump. I'm not, no one was getting too jarred out. We ended up moving well with our equipment through uneven terrain. Okay. Can I watch that? Can I watch a level 2 ski through the bumps And can you say, do they continuously flex and extend their legs in order to eat up the variability in the terrain? Yes, that's pretty darn good. All right. No? Okay. What's happening? Why can't they do that? And that should give you some pretty good insight on like what they may or may not be doing. So yeah, I would, I mean, you could almost watch a video and just listen to the commentary and say, is this person doing what they're saying? and you could probably glean some good insight out of that.
Yeah. Well, that's cool, man. It's a cool project. I hope it's at Pro Gym. I hope it's at Management Seminar. If we have any TVs running or anything and people can see it, because it needs to go out. Sometimes some of this material that's done kind of outside per se, you know, it isn't done directly by the organization, doesn't always get in there. This one is, which is cool because it's done by a couple of our team members and one of our Ed staff members from Rocky Intermountain. Is that was the region?
Intermountain. I think it's Whitefish, Montana is where Megan skis out of.
Yeah, cool. So it was super cool. I've been watching them a few times, and thanks for doing them. And it's great to have our boy Troy Boy in infamy that he's on video and on YouTube and probably be there forever. It's going to live for a long time.
Infamous.
I hope so.
More than
it does live a long time. I think it would be pretty cool. You know, it's had a couple people where they've been having lunch with somebody that at our orientation. They were like, "Yeah, I've been watching these videos from Nordica, and this guy skiing." Just kind of like, "Here it comes, here it comes." I'm gonna get land basted on this one. The guy was just, I couldn't believe what he was doing. I was like, "That's me." He's like, "What?"
Oh man, well that's cool, man. And thanks for taking the time, Troy. I think people will love it. They loved your podcast we did a while ago, and pretty technical, and which is good. They love that tech stuff. If we can get into it, Angelo, super good, man. It's always fun. This is hopefully help some folks out there, at least give them something to laugh at. If anything, but as Angela says, now we're down to 4 listeners, but thanks a lot everybody out there for listening. If you want, subscribe on YouTube or subscribe on Spotify, like the video. It always helps out, and definitely help out all of our sponsors. It's pretty cool. Our sponsors for Angela and I help us keep this going, and projects like Troy and Michael and Megan did with Nordica. I mean, that's pretty cool that our manufacturers are helping to get these things done that really benefit all of our members. So it's definitely, if you can help out the sponsors, the friends of that make all this stuff happen, that's the people really putting the push out there to let us do what we love to do and teach and ski and have fun all winter. So hopefully we'll see them out there. We got Snow Sports Management Seminar coming up. I know all 3 of us will be there. We'll all be at Pro Jam and Masters Academy. That's one of the huge events. It's great. I think it's Troy, you can correct me, other than National Academy and training, our Masters Academy must have the most team members in one spot, other than like your training things in National Academy.
Yeah, and I believe
for events,
that is the biggest event in the country.
Yeah,
Pro Jam Masters Academy. It's gigantic.
It's awesome. It's awesome. Killington hosting us there, and they got the World Cup coming in, and then we'll be coming in a couple weeks after. So we'll have some firm conditions up there in Superstar. Yeah. But hey, thanks everybody for listening. Hope you're enjoying the podcast. Let us know what's going on, though we know there's at least 1 or 2 people out there listening, and it's always good. And you 2 guys tomorrow, have a great Thanksgiving, and Angela and I are going to try to get this out so you folks can hear it driving to Management Seminar. Yep. Talk to you all later.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Bye-bye.